Let's go to the January 2024 friendly bank statement and look at the detailed transactions for the month. These are the transactions we're going to reconcile to the account journal. For each transaction that matches between the two, we'll place a mark in both the account journal and on the bank statement next to each entry. Let's review each transaction in the bank statement. On January 3rd, 2024, we see an opening balance of $0. This is not necessarily a transaction, but rather an entry from the bank that indicates the account was open. You can mark this entry without a corresponding entry in the account journal because this is not a transaction and no financial activity occurred in the trust account. Also on January 3rd, 2024, we see a transaction listed as deposit check number 3889, which credits the account in the amount of $200. We recognize this transaction as the initial deposit that our law firm made when opening the account. We can find the corresponding entry in the account journal we maintain as part of our regular bookkeeping. We reconcile this transaction by finding the corresponding entry in the account journal, placing a mark in the column Reconciled to Bank Statement, and placing a mark on the bank statement where this transaction appears. Also on January 3rd, 2024, we see a debit in the amount of $25 for the transaction listed as order bank checks. We can reconcile this transaction when we find that disbursement in the account journal. On January 8th, 2024, we see a $25,000 deposit of check number 6101. We can reconcile this transaction. On January 19th, 2024, we see a $7,500 wire transfer. We can reconcile this transaction. On January 31st, 2024, we see two transactions on the bank statement related to interest earned and interest transferred to the IOLTA program. These last two interest-related transactions will be the last two transactions of each monthly trust account bank statement and will always be the exact same amount. The interest is deposited into the IOLTA by the bank and then immediately swept to the State Bar's IOLTA program. Therefore, we do not need to record these transactions in the account journal or any individual ledger because the transactions will always be offsetting amounts, the second reversing the first. And at no time is the interest ever the property of you as the attorney or any of your clients. Therefore, you can mark these two transactions without a corresponding entry in the account journal. In looking at the bank statement, why would we not want to rely on this document alone to try to create an account journal or individual ledgers? The information provided by the bank may not identify the client or the purpose of each transaction, so you will not have the information required by Rule 1.15 to record in your account journal or individual ledgers. Now that you have reconciled each transaction in the bank statement to the account journal, we can review the account journal to see if any entries remain unreconciled to the bank statement. In general, there will be transactions in the account journal on the date of reconciliation that have not yet cleared the bank and therefore will not appear in the bank statement. In January 2024, we see two unreconciled transactions. Check number 1000 in the amount of $320 payable to South County Superior Court and check number 1001 in the amount of $1,850 payable to Darius Bryant. Since both checks were issued at the end of the month, it's not surprising that they do not yet appear on our bank statement because they haven't had time to clear the bank. We will leave reconciled to bank statement unchecked for both transactions in the account journal and expect to reconcile them in next month's reconciliation once they've been processed by the bank.